Hello. Welcome to another episode of Navigating Cancer Together. I am your host, Talaya Dendy. Navigating Cancer Together is the show that has something for everyone facing cancer. Why? Because everyone is different with different needs, beliefs, and perspectives. Thank you for joining us for this episode. I encourage you to open your minds and your hearts. Navigating Cancer Together is everywhere. Be sure to subscribe and follow the show to stay updated on our latest episodes. You can tune in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, or your preferred podcast app or platform. Today, our very special guest is Peta-Ann Wood. Peta-Ann is a breast cancer thriver, Soulful Coach, late diagnosed AuDHD, and creator of Elegant Rebel. She empowers other late diagnosed AuDHD women and soul-led rebels to embrace their you-ness unapologetically. An internationally recognized author, Peta-Ann draws from decades as a communication specialist and complementary therapist to craft transformative tools, oracle cards, and storytelling experiences to assist elegantly rebellious souls reclaim their voice, redefine normal, unmask their magic, and radiate authenticity. Whether through lived experience or mystical wisdom, her message is clear. Your answers are already within you, and your uniqueness is worth celebrating every single day. Peta-Ann, thank you so much for joining us today, and welcome.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here.
It is so nice to have you, Peta-Ann, and you have such a very interesting story. But before we really dive into our conversation, I would like for our valued listeners to get to know you a little bit. What is something unique or interesting about yourself that may surprise them?
I think the fact that I'm actually a trained journalist, and I worked as a journalist for about 30 years before I moved into mentoring and into soul coaching, oracle reading, and Reiki and holistic counseling and happiness coaching. I have this unique view of the world from a corporate and also a mystical point of view, and I blend the two in everything I do. So yeah, that's one of the unique things. And I played soccer as a kid. There you go.
Nice.
Back in the olden days when girls couldn't play soccer as a team, I had to train with my brother's team, but I wasn't allowed to actually play because that was in the 70s. So yeah, there you go.
Wow. Very interesting.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing. Peta-Ann, what is something that brings you genuine happiness and joy?
The ocean. I'm blessed to be able to live across the road from the ocean, and just walking next to the shoreline and watching, the pelicans. For example, last week I was just doing my normal walk, and there's a particular tree that I walk past every single day. But last week she just went, "Hi, I'm here." And it was just so gorgeous. And so, yeah, it was just pure bliss, just looking at her from a completely different angle. She has bent with the southerly winds, and it's just beautiful. So the ocean is definitely the thing that brings me the most joy.
I can relate to that. It's just a calming piece about water, being near water. It's just so calming, and it just feels so natural and actually welcoming too in some kind of way.
Yeah, it does. And as I said, I'm incredibly blessed. I just walk out onto my patio and I've got the ocean in front of me. Well, it's across the road, but it's in front of me. So anytime I'm having a bit of a moment of, oh my gosh, I'm struggling to breathe, patio, I'm done. You just go, ah. And even driving back from, going to the city, you drive over a very, very long bridge. And as soon as you hit the bridge and you've got the salt air, you're like, calm now.
Nice. Peta-Ann, you are here to talk about breast cancer and so many other things. Can you please walk us through the moment that you received the news that you have breast cancer?
Yeah, it was just over 10 years ago, actually, which is amazing in itself. My journey wasn't your standard journey. I was classified as interesting. I didn't have a lump this time. I had lumps back in my 20s. I was 45 and I was bleeding from one of my nipples. So about 3 months of testing, the do I, don't I, and the histology would come back saying yes, and then the next one would come back saying no. It was just all randomly crazy. There was nothing that came through on imaging. And so we did a process called a microductectomy, where my breast surgeon went in to investigate. And during that procedure, she found a 5-centimeter tumor in my milk duct. That particular procedure, just before we went into theatre, she said, there's 3 outcomes. It's all good. There's nothing to worry about. It's not good. And we need to take steps, or it's a watch and act. And we both sort of said at the time, it's going to be nothing. You're good. Then 3 days later, she rang me. It was a Saturday morning. And I'd literally just been having this crazy conversation with my best friend about how we were going to start delivering flowers in flower pots to people, because I don't like cut flowers. I find that just terrible. So we're having this randomly stupid conversation and giving counselling sessions, because I just started my counselling course and all this sort of stuff. And then my surgeon rings me and she said, I'm so sorry, it's breast cancer. And it was just this moment of, I'm not a crier, and I just burst into tears, because it was like, how does that even happen? Her recommendation was single mastectomy, radiation, lymph node clearance. And I had to go in and see her on the Wednesday to sign pieces of paper, do all the stuff, work out when it was going to happen, all those sorts of things. By the time I got there on the Wednesday, the oncologist and her and a couple of other surgeons had this big discussion about me. Had my films, because I had lumps when I was in my 20s. I've had a lot of scans over the years. So they've had all my scans up for the last 5 years or 6 years or something. Couldn't see anything in any of the scans I'd had. So that's when they recommended a bilateral mastectomy with immediate reconstruction, lymph node clearance, and potential radiation. So sent me off to the reconstruction surgeon, which is on the Friday. I go and see him and he's like, no, not possible. Can't have immediate reconstruction. So it went back to bilateral mastectomy, possible radiation, lymph node clearance. And that was all within 6 days. So my brain was just, I was in overload, which, that's not good. For any of us who have been diagnosed with any version of cancer, that overload is the immediate response. Yes. You're suddenly learning all these terms. Like, I didn't realize interesting was such a bad word until I met my surgeon. She's like, no, you can't be interesting. I'm like, I like being interesting. But anyway, so that was my diagnosis. Those 6 days, it was this fluid, and then 10 days later, bilateral mastectomy, gone. I was grateful after the lymph node clearance, didn't need radiation. And so that was a bonus. And then I've been in, as a consequence of my bilateral, my ribs move. So they pop in and out, and it's a bit painful. And I also had to have revision done of my bilateral, because I ended up with a massive ball of seroma under one of my arms as well. So I went from having 2 scars to having 4 scars that all join up. And that also causes issues with scar tissue attaching to your fascial muscle, and then that pulls your ribs out. 10 years down the track, I'm still in physio. I still must see my oncology physio because of rib movement, and I do a lot of strength training with an oncology exercise physiologist as well, and also bone density and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, I say it was fabulous that it didn't have radiation and chemo, and I'm 100% on board with that. But for those of us who didn't have that, there are other things that we live with as well. So I love being able to share with other people that it's not just, losing your hair is horrendous, but that's not the only outcome. Ongoing outcome. So yeah, that was my diagnosis.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And it's so important, like you said, to just point out, because we typically hear chemotherapy and radiation. We typically hear those things. And so to hear about another perspective, but that was also just as challenging, I think is very helpful for people, because there are a lot of different avenues that a person can go in terms of treatment, depending upon their situation.
Absolutely. And having a bilateral as well, the crazy stuff that happens that no one tells you about, because it may, and not for any reason, not they're hiding anything. It's just, it may not happen to you. So why worry you? But things like, because I had the other unique point of view that I have is I had incredibly large breasts. So I was 6 kilos lighter after I had my bilateral mastectomy. So that's how big they were, and dense. So going from, I often refer to it like a ship, a ballast on a ship. So I would fall over when I was walking, because my body was getting used to the different way to move. And there's a group of physiotherapists in the US called the Gait Guys. And they did a whole study on how your gait changes after bilateral mastectomy, because your arms move differently because you've got scar tissue and all this sort of stuff. And you get blisters in different places now because your whole walking movement changes. Well, for me, because I'd lost 6 kilos from the front of me. So yeah, it's interesting. And even now I still fall over. I'm still, sticking my arms out and trying to keep my balance. What you say is correct. In the media, it's all about chemo and it's all about losing your hair, which is, as I said, horrendous. I don't know what that feels like, and I can't even comprehend what that would feel like. But there's also other lifelong issues that we deal with, even though we didn't have chemo.
Were you aware, did they share some of these potential side effects with you?
No.
At that? Okay, they didn't. Okay.
No. The other one is that I discovered post bilateral is what your breasts are used for from a lymphatic drainage point of view. They do your lymphatic drainage. I didn't know that. So we all end up with, some of us call it poo belly. I call it Buddha belly. So your lymphatics drain, but then they get stuck on your scars. And so when you have bilateral, you not only have the scars where they take the breast tissue, but you've also got all the scars from the drains underneath the skin. So it gets stuck there and your belly expands and it contracts.
Oh,
and
wow.
I think it was a couple of months after I'd had my bilateral, I was literally somewhere watching the full moon rise, as I do. And this lovely old couple, oh, darling, do you want to have some of they had a bit of a picnic going on. And they asked me if I wanted to join. And they said, oh, but you can't have any of the alcohol because you're pregnant. No, I'm just looking at them going, no, I'm not pregnant. I breast cancer. I just don't have breasts anymore. It's because my Buddha belly was, on display that particular day. But they don't tell you. And again, it's not because they don't want to, it's because they don't want to worry you about things that may not occur. Well, that was the conversation I had with my breast surgeon. So maybe other breast surgeons are different.
Okay. Interesting. What did you learn about yourself, Peta-Ann, during that experience?
I learned that I am very much, it's a challenging question for me because there's so many things I learned. And the main one for me was that I was refusing to follow my own inner knowing about things. I'm not someone who does what they're told just because someone tells me to do it. There's so many stories from, my 50-odd years that I could share or my parents could share about me not doing what I was supposed to do because someone actually told me to do it, if that makes sense. So I promised my surgeon that I would do what I was told for the first 2 years. I actually said that to her because I process information and I process emotions using humor. So that was me processing. But strangely, I actually stuck to that, which that was eye-opening for me because I would not normally do that. I would normally follow my intuition, and I didn't. There were so many signs leading me down a particular path of staying flat, and I was, losing the weight because the reconstruction surgeon told me I had to lose weight before they could do reconstruction. All these little things that I would normally go, yeah, thank you, but no, thank you. You can move along now. And I literally was going, oh, okay, I can do that. Oh, okay, I'll do that. That's what I learned. Trauma changes you. And I was being a people pleaser. And I know I have that tendency, but courage also changes you. So I needed to find that courage to stand up to the folks that I was going, oh, yeah, I'll do that. Oh, yeah, I'll do that. It's like, no. So, but I also equally, I also recognized exactly how much strength I had and how much I do use humor to get through things. I didn't realize exactly how much I did that. And not so much to deflect, but to process, which led me down another path as well.
And, listening to you share that is so easy to go along with the quote unquote experts because you're in this new territory and you can feel like your life is on the line. And so I better just listen to what the experts have to say. But I think that it's so important to remind ourselves that we are the expert on our bodies.
Yes.
We're the expert on ourselves. And I'm so glad that eventually you came around to that. But I understand, for anyone, when you first get that diagnosis, you want to do everything possible to extend your life, have better outcomes, all of those things. So it's natural.
Yeah.
It's natural.
It is. But it was definitely eye-opening. And I mean, it took a very intriguing moment for me to go, oh, hold on, what are you doing? So, yeah, I was actually coming back from a lymphatic drainage session and I saw on the back of a ute, it was my first breast cancer awareness month post bilateral. And I saw in the back of the ute, a tradesman's ute, a sign that said, "Save the boobs." It's a fundraising group over this way. And I'm like, oh, that's, interesting. And I got closer and I was very excited that it was all decked out in the pink and all that sort of stuff. And then I saw this "Save the boobs" and my brain's just gone into meltdown. I was like, what about the person attached to the breasts? Where are they in that statement? Where are they in any of this? And that's when I started to unravel. By me doing all the yes, I'll do that, yes, I'll do that, I wasn't telling anyone what I wanted. And no one was asking me what I wanted. They wanted to know what my family thought. They wanted to know what this person thought. They wanted to know what that person thought. But no one was saying, Peta-Ann, what do you want? And it was really interesting. The day after I had my bilateral, I was literally sitting in the chair in the hospital, which was weird apparently. You getting out of bed the next day is strange, according to our breast care nurse. And she stuck her head in there and she's gone, "You look so serene and so calm." I'm like, well, yes, I am. What else is there to do?
Exactly.
You can't change what's happened. And in that moment of watching this "Save the boobs" and that replayed in my head, I'm like, what have I been doing? I've been following everyone else's directions when initially to be calm and peaceful, I was following what I needed to do for me. So got home, rang my younger brother, had a whinge to him. And the reason I whinged to him is because he's my just do it person. There's no fluff. There's, well, what are you doing? What action are you taking? What are you just
straight to it.
Stop. You know better. Come on. And he's also the person of, will tell me if I'm being a doormat. I didn't intentionally ring him for that reason, but that's where I ended up.
That's part of it.
Yeah. So, and he gave me a bit of a talking to about my ability to people please and that I should, really start focusing back on what I know best. And like you rightly said, we know our bodies best and what is best for our bodies. And that's where he was the person that suggested I use my journalistic background to start sharing information with other breast cancer thrivers about following their own intuition and doing what's right for them medically, but also listening to their own bodies. So, yeah, it was an eye-opening day, that one.
So you learned a lot.
I did.
And that's good. That's what it's about, though. We have to take those lessons with us because what I found is that a lot of the things that I learned going through cancer, which was a very hard thing, now when I face other challenges, there's some things that I've learned from that experience that I can use to help me to continue to move forward.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think because part of my treatment ended up every couple of years, I was having some more surgery for some reason. I haven't had surgery now for 3 years. So that's, I'm very excited about that. It's interesting when you start to put it all together of, what you learned in the initial phase. So 2 years after my bilateral, I had uterine polyps, suspected uterine cancer. So we had to go in, but it was an interesting process because I just went, okay, well, you have to do this, but this is what we're doing. Yes. So I'm leading it now. And while I didn't get everything I asked for on the first go, because I was new to the, telling the oncology and the surgeons what I was doing, and they weren't used to people telling them what they wanted. And so it took another couple of years for me. And that was the first diagnosis of uterine. And then years later, 2020, it was back. And there were polyps in my ovaries as well. So that was when I went, right, I'm not arguing anymore. You're taking it all out. I'm not going through this do I, don't I for the rest of my life. So for me, if I hadn't had the experience I had with my bilateral initially of being the people pleaser, I wouldn't have, and then stepping away from that and, helping others to ask their own questions and listen to their own bodies and find their own truth about what they're doing, I probably wouldn't have been so direct with the gynecologist saying, nope, all going. And getting my breast surgeon involved, getting my breast surgeon to tell the gynecologist, no, she's right, get it out. So it's interesting how it all starts to fall together and you become yourself again. Well, that's what I found. Breast cancer has given me the doorway to remember who I was. That's what I firmly believe. If it wasn't for breast cancer, I wouldn't be doing all the things that I do now. I'd be still in corporate going, I hate this job. Not that I did, but I didn't like all the stress. It's just really interesting how, it becomes the doorway to being you and being you, as I say, being the youest you can be.
I love that. And what I also heard you say was that you really became your own best self-advocate.
Yes.
It sounds like you learned how to advocate for yourself and to feel more comfortable sharing what your needs and desires are.
Yeah. It doesn't always happen. And, sometimes I'll leave a situation and go, oh, you missed that opportunity. But in general, yes, I'm more direct now about my needs. And I also think having a total hysterectomy and my ovaries removed lands me like a lot of breast cancer thrivers. We end up in medically induced menopause. Which, comes with a whole array of like standard menopause. It comes with a whole array of various potential outcomes that are amplified because it's medically induced. And one of the things that came through for me was, well, as a consequence, and I thank cancer and I thank breast cancer for this, is I was clinically diagnosed as neurodivergent as well. And then again, breast cancer opened that doorway. And by having that diagnosis, I got to meet my own brain, which means I'm now advocating so much better because I understand what my brain does and why my brain does something. And I won't tolerate being, oh, you're just a bit too different for us, or you're too this, or you're too that. It's like, no, I'm me and I will be me. So this is what I need. What do you need? How can we support each other? End of story. And all of that acceptance of different. I don't like the term different, but the acceptance of other people. Just, it doesn't matter who you are. You're still human. You have a soul. That's all that matters. End of story.
Yes.
I have so much to thank breast cancer for. It's an interesting dichotomy. Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. Of course, no one wants breast cancer or any form of cancer, but if you open up your mind, you will learn some things. You will really learn.
Even down to, I would never have had an exercise physiologist in my life, except I had breast cancer, and that's why I have an exercise physiologist in my life. However, I do an annual fun walk, which I would never have done before. I've always done strength training in my life, but I really do strength training now, like proper, training. And also she was part of an international study about the connection between exercise and decreasing metastasization. That's when I learned about how movement can actually prevent cancer coming back, because she was part of that studies, and she's actually doing the next stage of that study right now. So it's just those sorts of things. Again, breast cancer was the doorway for me to learn all these other things, and, learning about lymphatic drainage and learning about fascial muscles and how they wrap around your body, and if your big toes out because your shoulder's out, that sort of stuff. It's fascinating. For me, it's fascinating, but I love to learn, and I get that not everybody is like me.
Yes. Wonderful. Well, I'm glad that some positive things came out of your experience, because that's important too. One thing that you shared was that you were diagnosed late with AuDHD, neurodivergent. This really popped into my mind. And it's, how do you think your journey, your cancer journey would have been different had you known before your cancer journey?
Interesting.
How do you think that would have been different for you?
That's interesting. I wonder. It's not something I've pondered, and I wonder if it would be as simple as, if I knew my brain, I'd be able to advocate better. and I wouldn't have gone down the people-pleasing path, because people-pleasing is part of my version of neurodivergence. So the whole rejection sensitivity dysmorphia is where, so when AuDHD is autism plus ADHD, and it's not you're autistic and you're ADHD, it's an actual combination of the two. So one minute my brain wants order, structure, and then the next minute it's like, no, chaos, please. I want the squirrels chasing the blue butterflies. So, your brain is always trying to find that balance and that calm, which is why I love the ocean. That's why ocean brings me bliss. For me, it would be simple. I wouldn't be as people-pleasing, potentially. And because I always knew my brain was different. I was told I was dyslexic when I was 17. So I already knew that component. But because I was a child in the 70s and a teenager in the 80s, girls didn't have autism, girls didn't have ADHD. It was always boys. It was never a girl. But when you get clinically diagnosed, to be clinically diagnosed, you have to show those behavioral traits when you're a child. It's not something, you don't just read it on Facebook and go, oh, look, that's me. Family gets interviewed, everyone gets, so the people pleasing, I keep going back to it. It's the people pleasing. I think that would have been the main difference. I wouldn't have just blindly followed what was going on, the medical, what I was told to do, because the other side of it, what I've discovered is I do a lot of mirroring from a social point of view as well. So that also lends into the people pleasing, because you're mirroring someone else. So you're just doing what they're asking you to do. And the other one is the masking. I'm incredibly just amazing at masking, because I had to.
Yes.
Because you never fit it in. But then if you look at it, my choice to stay flat is so on point from being neurodivergent, because I'm not following what everyone else is doing. I'm doing my own thing. So it's a really interesting question that I'd have to, I think people pleasing is the main one, but there's so many other components as well.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. And people pleasing is a huge one for a lot of people.
Oh, absolutely.
I struggled with that before too. And you get to a point where you're like, no, I'm not going to keep doing this. Yeah. And I think part of it is really understanding what it is and what it stemmed from, the trauma around it. And I think once we get a grasp on that, then we can recognize and then we can correct it. Because we are not here to please everyone. No. We're not here to make everyone else happy. I know they say that we're supposed to do that, but that's not why God put us here. It's not our responsibility. It definitely isn't. Happiness is no one else's responsibility. Literally no one else's. Your happiness is your own thing. And then it's also about, and this is where my happiness coaching comes in, it's about determining the difference between what is happiness and what is happiness. So there's two different versions of happiness. There's one called hedonistic and one called eudaimonic. And hedonistic happiness is what most people think happiness is. It's when I get that new house, I will be happy. When I eat chocolate, I'll be happy. No, that's not happiness. That's fleeting. Yes, well, of course, you're happy for that moment, but that's not true happiness. True happiness is, peace, contentment, joy, bliss, finding the micro joy moments in every single day, which then add up. So micro joys are, I think people refer to them as glimmers, the glimmer moments where, the tree, that's a micro joy moment for me where first time I'd ever seen this tree in this particular light, it was just beautiful. The fact that my cat would come in when I was, having a moment and just sit at the floor. I mean, that's a micro joy moment because, they all add up to bring you peace and bliss and contentment. It's interesting how we project onto others that they somehow control our own happiness. It's nothing to do with anyone else. It's all internal. And it's about following your own soul. I call them soul nudges, but generally people call them intuition. So it's about following your intuition, your inner knowing, your gut feeling, whatever you call it, and following those moments of joy. Thank you for sharing that. Another thing, and I want to come back to the happiness coach because I find that so interesting. But I wanted to go back to the choice to be a flatty. Oh, yes. And it's a huge part of your story. And obviously you had a aha moment. Can you tell us a little bit more? when that aha moment happened and why you went that route. Because there may be women listening who are like, well, my husband wants me to, get implants, or my doctor said that's the best thing. But maybe there's somewhere inside of them where they don't want to go through any of that. They just want to they just want to stay flat.
Yeah.
When was that aha moment? How did you come to that decision?
There were a few moments along the way. The first one was the save the boobs. That was actually the initial, okay, where's the person in this? And then there's so much guilt around, well, I felt a lot of guilt around choosing not to have reconstruction, because there's just an assumption made from get-go that you will have reconstruction. No one ever asked me at any point, what did I want to do? And that was starting to really, 6 months in, that was starting to really play on my mind, even down to part of my revision was to remove the excess skin that my surgeon had left, because she assumed that I would get reconstruction. And because that's what she had determined that was happening. And at the stage, I went along with that because I didn't know anything different. And then there's a charity here, Look Good, Feel Better. And my breast cancer nurse, I don't know whether you guys have breast cancer nurses, but we have breast cancer nurses. She decided I needed to go and do this. I'm like, okay, I'll do this. But what I said to her was, I would do this if I can come and talk to you about options, not just having recon. That was my turning point of, okay, I'm taking my control back. And it was during that conversation. So I'd already lost 17 kilos at that point, and they wanted me to lose about 30 kilos or something just to get this ridiculous, BMI is just the most ridiculous concept in the entire world. Yeah. But the medical fraternity over here still use it, or at the time still used it. So I was in there talking to her about what were my options. And she said to me, most of her large-breasted women choose to stay flat. That's what she said to me. That was the first time she'd even mentioned staying flat to me. And this is 6 months after my mastectomy. And I'm just sitting there looking at her going,
and you initiated this conversation.
Yeah. I initiated this conversation. And I'm looking, that's the first time you've ever said that to me. And I've spent the last 6 months feeling guilty about wanting to stay flat. I'd been fitted for my prosthesis. I didn't wear them. I hated them. They just felt so heavy. I had a swimming set. I went swimming. One of them fell out while I was swimming. It was just, all these little signs that were leading me down to just stay flat. And then she said to me, well, you can wear frills and scarves to hide the fact that you don't have breasts. And that was the moment. I don't have any issues with her saying that to me, except for it diminishes your personality. It diminishes your personage, because you're assuming that you need breasts to be a woman.
Yes.
And that was my moment of, oh, hell no. Excuse my French, but oh, no. Yeah. No. I do not need breasts to be a woman. I have spent my entire life deflecting people talking to my breasts because they were so big, low self-esteem because my breasts were so big. People may not understand that, but when you're always looked at or watched, or breasts are spoken to and no one talks to you, that's not good. That's not good for your self-esteem. That's, I'm just a set of breasts. I'm nothing else. Just the whole concept of being told I could wear scarves and frills, which not even close to my style. My style is more 50s, 60s pin-up girl, than flouncy stuff. So
flouncy.
And I think I said to her, I wear scarves in winter. Why would I wear them any other time of the year? That was actually my moment. That was when the penny dropped. It was like, oh my God, don't do this for other people. And then listening to other women go, oh, my husband doesn't want me to stay flat. It's like, what's he got to do with it? It's your body. So all within a week, I was, at a breast cancer thrivers group, seeing my breast care nurse, having these two conversations about what other people wanted you to do, her telling me to wear frills. I'm like, no, no.
This is not it.
And at that stage, aesthetic flat closure wasn't a thing. So that came in a little bit after I had mine done. So, I have amazing divots and rolled ribs and all sorts of stuff. But that was my moment. That was my, no, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it because I was doing it for everyone else. I wasn't actually doing it for me. I used to manage a gridiron team here in Queensland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I know, random.
Nice.
Oh.
Yeah. Another interesting fact.
I was going to say, that's probably a more interesting fact than one I should. And I literally I put my prosthesis on and I went to a game and I was so worried that everyone would notice that my breasts were smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt more conspicuous wearing prosthesis than I did than staying flat. And that was the final moment. That was just like, right, I don't care anymore. This is me. This is what I've chosen to do for me. I'm not doing this for the rest of the world. There were 3 big moments and they were the 3.
So important because, like you said, it's so easy and it's the comfortable thing to a certain degree to just kind of go with what is considered the norm and what people expect us to do. But I want to applaud you and commend you for saying, let me explore this more. Let me ask some questions.
Thank you.
And it sounds like all the signs kept pointing you like, hey, you don't have to do this.
They did. I was just in that space where I wasn't listening. You know, it literally took that football game and I couldn't even stay the entire game because I just felt I thought everyone was looking at my fake boobs. That's what I thought. It's just like, I've got to get out of here. I can't stay. It's interesting once you start to put the little nudges together. It's like, how did you not see this beforehand? I mean, even down to my one and only visit with the reconstruction surgeon and him saying, no, you can't have immediate reconstruction. That was the first sign. It's like my breast surgeon goes, yes, you can. And he says, no, you can't. You know, that was the first sign. So, yeah, lots of little signs joining up. Yeah.
Yes. I'm so glad, though, that you were able to really land where it felt right for you and you were able to figure that out. And I think that's what this whole cancer journey is about, too. Is really figuring out what it is that you want.
Yes.
How you want things to look in terms of your life, relationships, whatever that is.
Absolutely.
And I think that's a part that some people miss sometimes, rightfully so, because you're just focused on surviving. You're just focused on getting through it.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. And that's something that really popped for me post few surgeries was I chose to stay flat for me. That doesn't mean that I expect everyone else to stay flat. I mean, my advocacy is about doing what you want to do for yourself and what's best for you. And if that means getting recon, fantastic. I'll support you 100%. If that means wearing prosthesis, go for it. If that means staying flat, wonderful. But do it for you. Not because society tells you, not because your husband thinks it's better, not because your family wants you to do it, not because your best friend said, oh, no, I can't go out with you if you don't have your breasts on. Do it for you. Just work out what you want and honor yourself, love yourself, respect yourself, and then celebrate yourself. It's not about everyone else. It's about what you want. It's happening to you. Follow that.
Celebrate yourself. Wise words. Peta-Ann, what inspired you to write your book? What happens when they don't go back? And what do you hope people will learn from reading it? And I think I know where you're going to go with this one.
I think you do too. So what inspired me with the points about staying flat was to save the boobs. That was the conversation I had with my younger brother. And he said to me, you're a journalist, aren't you? And I went, yeah. He said, well, that means you can write, doesn't it? He was being very sarcastic at the time. I went, yes. He said, well, have you ever considered writing a book about this? And I went, fair enough, fair point. Okay, yes, right, I'll do that. It took me 7 years to write my book, though, because I didn't feel as though I had the credentials to write. Yes. So I love neurodivergence sometimes. Rejection. I'm not good enough. I don't know what I'm doing. So it was that moment that I realized that all the things that I was going through, no one told me about. No one told me about Buddha belly. No one told me about my ribs. No one told me about exercise. No one asked me about, did I want to stay flat? So That was the reason I wrote my book, is to share that information with other people, and predominantly people around, not specifically other breast cancer thrivers, but people around them, so that they might have a better understanding of, hey, it's not about you, it's about them. Yes. And it's about asking them the questions. And it's about asking, there's a whole stack of tips in there about, making sure you take a notebook to every medical procedure, because you're not going to remember anything, because that's what trauma does to your brain. Mm-hmm. Your filing cabinets get full. A lot of the crazy stuff that I shared before about falling over while I was walking and all those sorts of things. And there's also a section about relationships as well, where I had a conversation with my best friend, who is a bloke, about, that's it, my partner left me just around the time I got diagnosed. He couldn't deal with me going through breast cancer. So I was single, and that's actually not uncommon. There's about 40-something% of women who end up single because of breast cancer. 40 or it's 60.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I had this crazy conversation with him about, that's it, not doing it. I'm not wearing foods. I'm not then having to pretend that I've got breasts. I'm not doing any of that. And then I did meet someone and literally knocked on my front door. He was running a building. He was fixing the building that I lived in. And within 5 minutes, and I just got back from the physio, opened the door going, oh my God, that was painful, because I was all strapped up trying to keep my ribs in. And within 5 minutes, we were already joking about the fact that I didn't have any breasts. So I knew that he was my person. I have to rewrite that chapter because it fizzled out, a couple of years ago now. We're together for 8 years. So, hey, that's pretty good.
It's good.
Yeah. So there's information about that as well. And it's about, at the bottom line of it, and what I would love people to take away from it is, like I said before, do it for you. It's about what you want. It's about what you need in your life. And to find the joyful moments in every day and link them together and follow your intuition. Don't ignore it, because it'll smack you even harder if you keep ignoring it. I think the final line of my book is, I also want world peace, but it's because I write like I talk. This particular book is intentional. It's written like you're having a cup of coffee with me. And it was written pre-diagnosis of neurodivergence. But if you read it really carefully, you'll say, oh, how did you not know? Yeah. Because it's very all over the place in some places. But yeah, the bottom line is, honor yourself, respect yourself, love yourself, and be the youest you can be by asking the hard questions, by asking yourself the hard questions. What do I want?
Peta-Ann's book, What Happens When They Don't Grow Back, can be found on Amazon.com or on her website, ElegantRebelPonders.com. Peta-Ann and I experienced some technical difficulties during our conversation. So unfortunately, the last couple topics that we covered during our conversation were not recorded. So there will be a part 2 of this episode in the next week or two. Please stay tuned for that episode, where we will close out our discussion with some very helpful topics. Valued listeners and Navigating Cancer Together community, I have a question for you. Have you ever experienced a difficult choice or challenge that ultimately became a catalyst for something beautiful or empowering in your life? Share your story with us. You can leave a private audio message or text in our fan list inbox, which is fanlist.com/NCT podcast. I may share a response on an upcoming episode. I would like to encourage anyone out there listening, if you have been inspired by this conversation today and you're looking for a community that truly understands the journey of navigating cancer, I invite you to join the waitlist for the community forum. It is a space where you could find support, share your story, and connect with others who have been where you are. You can find the link in the show notes. And while you're there, if you enjoy this episode, please hit the subscribe or follow button on your favorite podcast app. It is the best way to ensure that you don't miss out on future episodes, and it helps us continue to bring you powerful stories of resilience and hope. That is it for this Wednesday. And until next time, let's keep navigating cancer together. Take care.